everyone, welcome back to a writing test series. Today we have a new question. Let's see what this one is. So, nowadays, people in most countries decide to have children later in life. Why do they do so? Do the advantages of this trend outweigh the disadvantages? Okay, so that's pretty interesting. This is kind of a two-part question. I mean, you might think that this is an advantage-disadvantage question because obviously you see those words right here, but if you pay attention, there is a question that comes before that one. Yep. So it's important that you don't ignore that question. A lot of people, will just look for keywords. They'll just look for, benefit, advantage, positive, negative, something like that. And then, they end up writing something which is only partially relevant to the question. So, if you don't answer the question, if you don't do what they expect you to, if you don't do what they want you to do, then of course that's going to be a major problem. Sorry about my alarm. Okay, so that's good because a lot of people see this kind of question, they get really confused and they think, well, what is this? The fact is that two-part questions can really be a mixture of the other four essay types, right? But there'll always be something that's different. Like, for example, a lot of people will get confused between two-part questions and problem solution essays. And the thing is, if you have a problem solution question, they will ask you to do two things. The first thing can be either they ask you for the results or they ask you for the reasons for something happening. And the second question always has to be, it could be a question, it could be just a request, could be a sentence. But the second question or sentence is always about providing some kind of solution to fix a problem. If those two don't exist, then you don't have a problem solution question, right? Then it's just a two-part question. And so just like this, here you can see, okay, we've got the keywords, advantage, disadvantage, but very specifically, they first also ask you, why do people have children later in life? So if you have something like this now, the first paragraph will be about why do people nowadays have children much later in life. And your second paragraph will kind of have to be a hybrid of advantages and disadvantages. There are, in fact, quite a few ways you can do this. You can even respond to this using 3 body paragraphs if you would like. That is also a possibility. Not something I would recommend to everyone because, again, of course, if you write 3 body paragraphs, you're gonna need more time, more effort, and that's not always possible for everyone in 40 minutes. I may be able to do it, but then I don't think that's good advice for most people watching the channel. So yeah, maybe I'll do something like that, or maybe I'll just do 2 paragraphs. Let's see. I think the 2 paragraph format could be just fine because I can put in all of the benefits and the drawbacks in 1 paragraph. I can kind of pair them. I can have I can say that, it does this, but it also does this. Let's say one advantage of having children later in life is that you're financially stable, obviously, right? But I can kind of contrast that. Within the same sentence, I can also have, a disadvantage of that, right? And anytime that you have this kind of advantage-disadvantage thing, you are expected to also kind of, show your own opinion, yeah? It may not be explicitly stated, but if you look at the meaning of the sentence, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? So they are asking you, do you think that this practice is more beneficial than non-beneficial, or vice versa? Do you think it's more disadvantageous than advantages? Now, this does not mean that you write more advantages than disadvantages. It does not mean that you write more disadvantages or advantages, right? No, because otherwise you're going to have improper development. Yeah, so I've yapped too much. I'll get straight on with the writing. Okay, so first I need to have my main ideas. Now, this is just what I like doing. You might like to do it differently. That's entirely up to you because, again, everyone's different. I cannot say what will work for you because, again, I don't know who you are. If you were a student of mine, then it'd be a different thing. But yeah. Okay, so why do people do so? I think the biggest reason probably is just culture has changed so much. People live much longer lives. You don't have to get married at 18 because, you're not going to die at 50 anymore. you live to 70, 75, 80. I think culture has also changed. There's not so much pressure on people nowadays. Society is not so close-minded anymore. Yeah. So I think I could probably just put the I mean, not blame, not responsibility, but really I think the biggest cause is just how society has changed. So um, society has changed. I mean, it's transformed, really, not even changed. And when was the last time that people still had kids young? Probably in the, I mean, depends, of course, from country to country. Some countries, it's still very common to get married when you're 20, 21, 22. I think this kind of practice is mostly common in industrialized societies, let's say first world countries and so on. But of course, it's becoming popular everywhere. That's just the nature of things. And as someone who studied economics, I can tell you that we actually have an entire theory about this. It's just really cool. It's called the microeconomic theory of household fertility. I think I've mentioned it in a previous video, but anyway, that's another thing. Okay, so society has completely transformed in its let's say in its view of I mean, okay, you marry young, you have children young. I think in its view of an ideal family, or well, how do I put it? I want to have the meaning be pretty clear. So and people, over the past, right, okay, so I was gonna say something about over the past, let's say, even in the modern world. Let's say, I think, let's take an example of an industrialized society, right? Even in these countries, it was common to marry young, have children young. I think until the 80s or so. So that's just what, 40 years ago. So I could probably say that because we are seeing the same trend happen even in second world developing countries. So that kind of change is happening. Like, it's happening right now, but it started, of course, quite a while ago. And I think I could maybe I could say after the World War, but actually after the World War, there's a huge boom in babies being born, which is why it was called the Boomer generation, right? The baby boomers. In fact, it's so cool. The more you know about stuff like this, you can really frame your knowledge into your essay. Yeah. And the reason why I talk so much is just so I can explain, you can kind of remember, there was an interesting tidbit that I heard. It really makes your writing interesting. It's not that you have to be some kind of history nerd or economics nerd to, write a good essay. Not at all. But, the more knowledge you have, an essay is what? It's you passing your knowledge on to someone else. That's really what it is. So society has completely transformed over the past, let's say, I wouldn't say after the war, because there was, in fact, it's weird because in the 1940s, women worked because the men were away at war, right? So 1930-ish, 1940s, and then in 45, the war was, over. And weirdly, the women were, like, they were fired and they were sent, like, obviously the men were back and the men needed jobs. So the women would be, kicked out of the workforce. And essentially they just look forward to being, housewives. So, yeah, there were lots of kids, like I said, baby boomers. And I think that kind of lasted until about the 60s or 70s when people, again, there was this whole revolution. So, yeah, I'm going to say 50 years just to be sure. Over the past 5 centuries. And I'm going to explain how it has changed. For example, traditional family units and nuclear families began to increase in popularity since the 1950s. I mean, that's just when it started in, like the first world. But now it's common even in developing countries. So, yeah. That's one thing, of course. And it's important. Why? Because a lot of people think raising a kid is super easy. It's not. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. You cannot just, like, there's 2 people and there's a kid. They have no support. They don't have the grandparents. They don't have relatives, people around them. It's difficult. And of course, I mean, if 50 years ago people had like 4 or 5 kids, they had, this huge family unit. They had a lot of support, so they were able to do it. But now, I mean, that's really difficult. So that's one reason. And another reason is, let me think, less pressure. A lot of people actually had kids just because, society, that's what I'm supposed to do. If I don't do it, I'm gonna be weird, and I don't want to be weird. They didn't really want kids. They just had them because, well, that's what everyone does, and a lot of people still do. It's a shame, really. Less pressure, and there's more individual freedom. There's so much individual freedom nowadays. People even from like 20 years ago would be so jealous of the kind of freedom that we have today. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. I, anyway, as a woman, for example, even as recently as I think 19, I don't know, 70s or something, women were not even allowed to have their own, I think, bank accounts. You would need to have someone like a husband or a father approve things for you. So strange. Think about that. So liberty, I think that's important. It's yeah. And another reason is, okay, why else do people have children? One thing is desire. You can be more authentic. You don't have to do something that society forces you to, because there's not that much pressure nowadays. And old family systems, I think I've already talked about old family systems, so I think that's covered already. I also think that maybe things are becoming more expensive. Maybe that's because, it's so common that you would hear like people say, oh, my grandfather just worked like, a ticket collector or something, and he had like a wife and he had like 5 kids, and, they were able to, have a stay at home mom. And nowadays you can't do that. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think about, why is that such a common complaint? Why do people always say that millennials are so, it's so difficult for millennials to, like buy a home, for example. Our parents were able to do it. Why can't we? And that, they can't, just get on with being an adult. Like, we're marrying later, having children later. I think that's a huge part. I mean, it's something. Rising, I think, even though we live in like such peaceful times, like imagine people were having children even in times of war. And I think yeah, of course there is a war going on right now, but it's not at my, it's not around my border. It's not around your border, most likely. If it is, then you probably wouldn't be watching this video. I'm not meaning to be insensitive, actually, but it's still a very peaceful world overall. Right, so rising, prices, I think it's actually true that even though incomes have, of course, increased, they haven't kept pace with the value of things. Your money is worth less than what it used to be. I mean, there was this image that I saw. I don't remember exactly where I saw it. I couldn't even find it now if I wanted to, but it was something about how a house used to cost something and an average salary was this much, so people would, be able to easily make payments. But now the average house is like this much and the average salary is this much, even though we're, earning more money in terms of the number value, in terms of the numeric value, the worth isn't really that much. So wages haven't really kept pace with the prices of things, right? I mean, where I live, I've actually estimated that the prices double every 10 years, and that's crazy when you think about it. Really crazy stuff. Okay, and I think that's good enough. That's really all. That's my ideas. It's good enough. You don't really have to go into like super in depth or something, so don't worry about that. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna need my next idea. Okay, do the advantages try and outweigh? I mean, is it advantageous? No, because it's, oh my god, I could write a whole new essay on this thing. There's just so many factors. Oh god, this is where I get confused, because I feel like I have so much to say, but then you realize, okay, but you really cannot write a 500-word essay. That's that's not the right thing to do. So now I have to construct one sentence. See, if this was an advantage, disadvantage essay, I'd have 2 separate main idea sentences, right? But now the conundrum is that I have to kind of bring that in together. Of course, I can do that. I can use a word like despite, although, while. It's perfectly, possible. It's not difficult. I'm just thinking I have so much to say, but then I have to control myself, essentially. So, although this may seem harmless at first, it does present a few challenges, I think. Yep, all of this is this trend. Okay, and I'm gonna do this kind of thing. I'm going to kind of, contrast the good and the bad. So just have a look here. Okay, why is it like this? I love tables. So I mean, of course, you can't do this thing in the exam if you're doing. I mean, you can actually. You can make a table when you're doing the computer-based test, but you can hand draw it. You don't have to act. I just like how it looks. I just like it being neat. That's all. Okay, so I'm gonna delete the one over here. There we go. Okay, so one benefit is that I think people have kids. I don't know. That's not very good. I'm just gonna write down the disadvantages first. Economies suffer. That's a big one. Listen, if you don't have young people being born, you don't have people paying enough taxes. You have more older people. That's a huge problem. Look at Japan, look at Germany, look at all these places. They're really concerned about their pension systems running dry, because who's going to pay for all these old people's pensions? And I'm not saying they don't deserve them. Of course they do. They paid into the tax system. They, did their jobs as citizens. And now there's a big question mark, because obviously if you retire, you're not working. How will you pay income taxes? Someone has to work. Someone has to pay income taxes. So that's really bad for economies. And that's why a lot of countries actually have some really good programs to, kind of like pay mothers a certain sum of money if they have, a certain number of children. Or just, supplement with immigration like most countries are doing. Because it's easy, if you have open immigration policies, you can quickly bring people in, then they quickly start working, they quickly start paying taxes. A child, my god, that's going to take 18 years for one child to grow up, be an adult. And I mean, when you're 18, I don't think you're getting a job that really pays much in terms of you being able to pay income tax anyway. So yeah, it's probably a longer timeline anyway. Okay, so one thing is economies suffer. What else? I think that's my major cultures die. Cultures do die. I mean, there are so many languages that are, at risk because there's not enough native speakers, because their cultures are dying. And I think that's a shame. As somebody who enjoys learning languages, it's always, like when you hear, oh, there's some tribe and they just don't have people, like, oh, that's really sad. So economies suffer, cultures die. Okay, what happens? Oh yeah, oh my god, I didn't even think of the personal aspects. There are issues with their health risks to the mother and to the children. It's just inevitable, and that kind of bites, because I'm kind of at that age where I think I should be thinking about this, but what can you do? I mean, it's very difficult to find, a decent partner. So I shouldn't be complaining about that here. But anyway, I mean, I'm just all about being honest. So, okay. One aspect, of course, is that parents are, I mean, you're not like a 20-year-old still, still developing yourself, right? Because the brain isn't even fully developed until you're 25 years old. Did you know that? Yeah, and people back then were having kids like 18, 19, 20. I mean, you're a child yourself and you're having children. So parents are, better prepared. But then there's health risks, right? Having fewer children, I mean, it's good for, prevents overpopulation. So you see what I'm doing here is I'm contrasting the good with the bad, right? We hear it all the time. Oh, the world is overpopulated, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but, obviously that's a valid point. But there are a lot of places which actually, if you look at countries, lots of countries are in fact underpopulated. So it's not that the world needs to just stop having kids. There are certain areas which would benefit from having fewer people. And most economies anyway are facing, even the big ones like China and India, they are facing lower birth rates, which is good for them anyway. They're not they're not facing any kind of danger. It's just healthy for them at this point. So it prevents overpopulation, but then economies suffer. And then let me see, what can I say for cultures? I think maybe I don't need 3 ideas. Let me see. These 2 points are related, but this one's a little bit different. I think it might be best for me to just start with my introduction, because I'm sure the idea will come back later anyway. I do this a lot, if you've noticed. So, right, my introduction. Okay. People in most countries that have children later in life. Starting a family. Considered a major milestone of adulthood. Of course, there's no bigger signifier that you're an adult compared to this one, right? So starting a family is considered a major milestone of adulthood and is a common rite of passage. Or maybe I'll just say is a common rite of passage into real adulthood, right? And is often considered one of life's most important decisions. Most important and perhaps most valuable, I don't know, let's see. Now, my rule usually for background statements is that they should be around 20 words. This is 22, so that's good. Okay. Starting a family is a common rite of passage into real adulthood and is often considered one of life's most important decisions. Although these days it is quite common for people to either delay or completely forego this. Lots of people just choose not to have children because they don't like them or they feel like they're not going to be good parents or whatever reason. All reasons I think are valid. I don't think a child should be born if they're not 100% wanted. And then I think I've already used all the okay. Oops, what's that? Okay, despite. Why does this keep popping? Okay. Despite the fact that this trend, this practice could appear beneficial for some, it is not without its drawbacks. That's okay. Perfect. Job done. Then I go on to my main idea. Let me copy that main idea, put it over here. Less pressure. I think these two are related, so I can put these together. The order is good. And that's obviously the biggest change. I think this should be number one. There's less pressure. That's the biggest reason. There are many societies where there is a lot of pressure, and this could be over here. That's much better. Okay. The biggest change is that people no longer feel pressured by their parents and communities to have children early in life. I mean, I haven't talked about life expectancy, but that's okay. I mean, there's hundreds of reasons. Obviously, in a tiny essay like an IELTS essay, you're not gonna include every single reason anyway. The biggest change is that people no longer feel pressured by the parents and communities to have children early in life, which means they can have children when they're really ready, when they truly feel ready, truly want them, yeah, or feel well prepared enough to do so, to become parents, right? The biggest change is that people no longer feel pressured by the parents and communities to have children early in life, which means they can have children when they truly want them. They can beget. Okay, you know what? I can use a beget offspring. You can use something like this, but do you see how odd it looks? It's just very. It looks odd. I don't like it, so I'm gonna stick to reproduce, to procreate. Maybe marry and procreate. You can have children when they truly want them or feel prepared enough to become parents, right? Or take on the responsibility of parenthood. That's much better, I think. Right. And then, in conjunction with this newly found freedom, there is also the obvious decrease in the popularity of multi-generational homes and large communities, which once provided the support necessary for young new parents. With the popularity, or rather with the rise of the nuclear family system, mothers, I mean, the father goes off to work anyway, but the mother has to deal with everything alone. It's really difficult. With the rise of the nuclear family system, parents find themselves with little support, unless they can pay a nanny or a well, a babysitter is kind of temporary, right? You can pay a nanny, a maid, and hire support staff. Which only the rich can really do. And finally, the final nail the final nail in the coffin of early parenthood. Final nail is the concern of is the cost of living. As prices keep rising but do not match wages being offered. Which people are just struggling to survive, right? So people reduce the number of children they have. They, again, just delay, right? Which makes people have to delay parenthood as they may not be able to afford a decent life. Right? And then as a result of that, these societal changes, or these could say, have spearheaded the decrease, or have spearheaded the delay. Spearheaded, I think, this new generation of late or older parents. These societal changes have spearheaded the revolution of, or rather, have led to first-time parents being much older than historical averages. There we go. And finally, major concern voiced by environmentalists is that the planet is already overpopulated, and the decrease in birth rates and delaying parenthood and decreasing the number of children people have. Naturally, if you start being a parent when you're 35 or something, how many years of fertility have you got? Maybe 5, 10, and obviously you're not going to have like 5 kids in 5 years. That's just impossible. I mean, you could, but it's super unhealthy. And delaying parenthood and decreased number of children one has could be, of course, could be good. However, this this is a double-edged sword, right? Because at the cost of saving the planet, lots of cultures die out. I don't know if I should. Let me see. Here I have a point about economies, but maybe I think it's better to have this because you're saving the planet, but you're killing off human culture, right? This is a double-edged sword. As human cultures are dying out due to as many, not all, of course, as quite a few are dying out. I think I should say are at risk of not extinction, but yeah, I'll just say dying out. I think that's fine. Due to the lack of members, right? And then I talk about economies. Okay, it is also considered good for countries to have, I mean, let's say if you're okay, so it's not about not having children, it's about having children later in life. But naturally, if you have children later in life, you are going to have fewer children. That's just a thing. If you start having kids at 18, you're going to have so many years of fertility. If you start having kids at 28, that's less. 38, that's even less. So I think it's just a natural thing. I don't think that I'm wrong in also talking about fewer kids naturally. So it's also good for the countries. Let me see. It's considered good for countries to have let me see. I don't know. Maybe I'll just look at this first. I don't know about that. Maybe I'll just take this. It's considered good for parents. Yeah. Parents to have life experience, right? Enough life experience and feel well prepared before they become parents, or people to have enough life experience. I think I can say although I've already said although, yeah, despite additionally, while it is now considered ideal for people to first have enough life experience and be well prepared before they have children, the risk of health problems for mothers and their children also rises with advanced maternal age, but also paternal ages, yeah, with advanced maternal and paternal ages. Risk for health problems with children, such as, let's say, Down syndrome. Yeah, this is just one example. Autism, right? Down syndrome or autism also rises with advanced maternal and paternal ages. So there I have my two ideas, and now I'm still thinking about the last one. I'm talking about economy, so that really should be over here. I think I'll put this over here, and I'll just think about what I can write over here, because I kind of want to combine the benefits and the drawbacks. I know that I've taken kind of a more difficult route, but I kind of enjoy the challenge. So let's see. Okay, let me just have a look at how many words. Kind of looks kind of big. Let me see. How many words is this? Oh, that's huge. 175. Okay, that's fine. I mean, okay. A major concern voiced by environmentalists. Okay. It is also worth considering that while I've already used while. Okay, let me see. I don't want to repeat the same because there's so many options. You can use despite. I haven't used despite, have I? I think I've used it in the introduction only, so that's fine. In fact, I'm going to use despite. Despite the fact that delays in I mean, it's, oh yes, it ties into what I know is that when people have children later, they tend to be more educated and they tend to be, well, wealthier. Yeah, not wealthy, but okay, maybe they have more financial capital. Despite the fact that an economy stands to benefit when its members or citizens delay parenthood and acquire an education and contribute, especially women, right? Because once a woman becomes a mother, it's just, I mean, who's going to take care of the kid, right? Of course you can have a nanny, but not everyone can afford that, right? So yeah, you've got like half of your workforce that's going to either drop out of employment or they're going to be underemployed. Now that's not just bad for the people, that's bad for the country, because what about my tax money, dude? Okay, so it's also worth considering that despite the fact that an economy stands to benefit when its members delay parenthood and acquire an education, and delay parenthood to acquire an education and contribute to the workforce and the coffers, right? It is also true that when there are fewer children are being born later and in fewer numbers, it causes major issues with demographics and the pension system. This is a problem as seen in countries like Japan and Germany. There we go. Additionally, ideal for people. Okay, there we go. There are my ideas, you see. So even if you, yeah, in fact, my point was that economies benefit and they suffer. It's very cool. There we go. Okay, that's perfect. And then finally, friends, I personally, okay, so I think it's not such a good thing. And I've kind of made that point because first I'm talking about, okay, so I have to use weak modal verbs, right? A major concern the planet is, one has could are dying out. It may stand to benefit. May stand to benefit. Delay parenthood to acquire education, contribute to the workforce and country's coffers. It's also true when children being born later. Well, it may be considered. Well, it might now be considered ideal. Now be considered ideal for people. There we go. I've used weak modal verbs and I've made my position clear because one side is weak, the other side is strong. So, if people delay, or put off having children and have fewer children, the risks are, these are huge risks, right? Their countries and the world at large will suffer. Because imagine entire cultures dying out because people are not having kids. Okay, finally, in conclusion, it is obvious, it is evident that this societal shift towards parenthood or towards children and parenting, or well, not parenting because well that's what you do when you have kids, but towards children, societal shift in attitudes, not really attitudes towards child rearing, or maybe my battery is low, let me put my charger in. So I'm gonna think of my sentence. If people put, let me look at my introduction. So my introduction says that it's rite of passage, could appear beneficial, it is not without its drawbacks, which can wreak much havoc. There we go. Now that's much stronger. Good. Okay. This societal shift in attitudes towards children. Well, it's not an attitude towards children. Maybe I'll change that. People's attitudes towards child rearing, right, are an obvious result. Well, I already said that. I don't know why they want me to put it as two different words. It's fine, it's normal. Okay, people's attitudes towards child rearing have changed because of societal shifts. But this but even though this does represent some let's say, I mean, it's you live in a more free society, right? Some positive this does represent some positive changes. There is a major risk looming in the near future for many human societies if this practice continues. If we truly wish for our cultures and countries to thrive and not be driven into extinction, we ought to consider, having children. We ought to perhaps consider, I'm not saying you have to, but maybe, of course it depends where you're from. We ought to perhaps consider having children earlier and in, at replacement levels at least, right? Okay. Well, you can write whatever you want, there's no good opinion or bad opinion, so don't worry, is this a nice, opinion or not? Well, that's 500 words. I just said that I shouldn't write 500 word essays and I ended up doing that. Gosh, okay. Anyway, well, here's the introduction. Here's the first body paragraph. Here's the next body paragraph. And here's the conclusion. Okay, now of course you would probably write half the size. This is I can write like this. I can also change it. You know what they say? It's important to be concise as well, but for now anyway, I mean, my challenge is just to write an essay in like 45 minutes or something, and looks like I achieved it. So I'll see you maybe next time, maybe on Sunday. I don't know if I can do it on Sunday. That's tomorrow. Maybe not on Sunday. Then maybe on Monday I'll see you, and then again on Wednesday. So stay tuned, because this month we're going to do a lot more of these. My goal is to write these essays twice a week. Let's see if I can stick to that. All right then. Well, that's it for today. See you later.